Welcome to the LM Report, your trusted source for in-depth analysis of political, economic, and geopolitical developments. I'm your host, Lima, and this is episode 19, recorded on June 24, 2025. Today's episode, titled Global Diplomacy, Domestic Reforms, and Political Crossroads, examines recent U.S. diplomatic achievements in the Middle East, domestic policy challenges, and the evolving political landscape as the 2026 midterms approach. Our goal is to provide clear, factual insights to foster informed discussion. Let's dive in. Section 1. U.S. Diplomacy in the Middle East. A ceasefire breakthrough. Overview of the ceasefire agreement. On June 23, 2025, President Donald J. Trump announced a historic ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran, marking a significant step toward de-escalation in the Middle East. The agreement, facilitated by direct negotiations with both nations, establishes a 12-hour transitional period during which ongoing military operations will conclude, followed by a formal cessation of hostilities. The ceasefire, described by Trump as ending a 12-day war, aims to prevent a prolonged conflict that could destabilize the region. In a Truth Social post, President Trump stated, "Israel and Iran came to me almost simultaneously and said peace. I knew the time was now. Congratulations to everyone." The agreement stipulates that Iran will initiate its ceasefire at 4:00 AM Tehran time, with Israel reciprocating 12 hours later. By the 24th hour, the conflict will be officially concluded, assuming both parties adhere to the terms. Trump emphasized mutual respect during the transition, expressing optimism that everything works as it should. Context and strategic implications. The ceasefire follows U.S. military strikes on June 22, 2025, targeting Iranian nuclear facilities at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. These precision strikes, authorized by President Trump, disrupted Iran's uranium enrichment program, which had reached 60% purity, nearing weapons-grade levels. The operation, utilizing GBU-57 bunker busters, caused significant damage to Iran's nuclear infrastructure, with no reported radiation leaks per the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. Iran's limited retaliation 14 missiles launched toward U.S. bases, 13 of which were intercepted, underscored its weakened position. The strikes and subsequent ceasefire have shifted the regional power balance, strengthening U.S. leverage in future negotiations. Trump's diplomatic strategy, rooted in peace through strength, combines military action with deal-making, aiming to secure long-term stability without prolonged U.S. involvement. The 12-hour transitional period was strategically designed to test compliance and expose potential spoilers. On June 23, a single missile was launched toward Israel, prompting a brief Israeli response. Iran's state media denied responsibility, suggesting the launch may have originated from a rogue faction. President Trump, acknowledging the incident, noted, "It was one missile, and I'm not sure that Iran intentionally launched it." He swiftly intervened, ordering Israel to stand down, reinforcing his control over the process. Regional and global reactions. The ceasefire has elicited varied responses. Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu affirmed compliance with Trump's terms, despite initial frustration over the missile incident. Israel's complementary strikes on Iranian access routes during the U.S. operation reflect its alignment with U.S. objectives. Iran. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi denied a formal ceasefire agreement, but indicated Iran would halt operations if Israel ceased aggression by 4:00 am Tehran time. Internal pressures, including reported defections within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps (IRGC), suggest growing instability. Middle Eastern allies, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, engaged by Trump prior to the strikes, expressed support for de-escalation, viewing Iran's weakened nuclear program as a regional win. Russia and China both condemned the U.S. strikes but welcomed the ceasefire, with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov offering to mediate future talks. European Union. The EU urged a return to the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, emphasizing diplomacy over military action. Globally, the ceasefire is seen as a testament to U.S. leadership. Mark Rutte, NATO Secretary General, congratulated Trump, stating, "Your decisive action in Iran makes us all safer." Rutte's remarks, tied to upcoming NATO discussions on burden sharing, highlight Trump's broader influence. Historical context: ceasefires and challenges. Ceasefires historically face implementation hurdles. The 1918 armistice ending World War I, signed at 5:00 am but effective at 11:00 am, saw continued fighting due to communication delays. Similar patterns occurred in the Korean War, 1953, Vietnam War, 1973, and World War II, 1945, where transitional periods allowed skirmishes. Trump's 12-hour buffer accounts for such risks, ensuring both parties can wind down operations while maintaining accountability. The ceasefire's success hinges on mutual restraint. Iran's internal divisions, including defections reported by media outlets, could complicate compliance. In Israel, hardline factions advocating continued strikes pose a challenge, though Netanyahu's commitment to Trump's terms mitigates this risk. The U.S. is monitoring compliance through satellite imagery and intelligence, with the Pentagon prepared to respond if violations escalate. Future prospects. The ceasefire opens a window for diplomacy. Potential outcomes include nuclear negotiations, a revised JCPOA or new agreement requiring Iran to dismantle its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Leadership transition in Iran. Growing public discontent, fueled by economic collapse and nuclear setbacks, may lead to a peaceful, people-driven change. Trump has ruled out U.S.-led regime change, stating, "If the Iranian people want to do something about their own leadership, that's up to them." Regional stability. A U.S.-led coalition, building on the Abraham Accords, could counter terrorism and foster economic cooperation. Risks remain, including potential cyber attacks or lone wolf violence in the U.S., as warned by the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, on June 22, 2025. The advisory, effective until September 22, 2025, highlights Iran-affiliated threats, urging vigilance, domestic policy challenges, immigration, security, and healthcare. Immigration enforcement, tensions and reforms. Immigration policy remains a flashpoint. On June 22, 2025, a viral video showed U.S. Border Patrol agents detaining a Santa Ana, California man described by KTLA as a father. The individual, later identified as an undocumented immigrant, assaulted agents with a weed whacker, a detail omitted by initial reports. DHS countered, stating, "He assaulted federal law enforcement. Perhaps the mainstream media would like our officers to stand there and be mowed down." The incident sparked speculation about media narratives, with some suggesting it could fuel unrest, though social media quickly debunked exaggerated claims. In a separate case, Kilmar Abrigo Garcia, a Salvadoran national charged with drug and human smuggling, was ordered released by a D.C. magistrate judge, citing due process. The DOJ intervened, ensuring Garcia remained in custody, with ICE confirming he will never go free on American soil. These cases highlight the administration's aggressive enforcement stance, with ICE reporting 150, 0 deportations in 2025, a 30% increase from 2024. The Supreme Court's 6-3 decision on June 20, 2025 lifted lower court injunctions allowing deportations to third countries when nations refuse to accept their citizens. However, U.S. District Judge Brian Murphy defied the ruling, prompting criticism from Stephen Miller, who called it a radical escalation of the communist coup within the judiciary. Chief Justice John Roberts has yet to address the defiance, raising questions about judicial accountability. Innovative enforcement measures are underway. Secretary Kristi Noem announced plans for Alligator Alcatraz, a detention center in Florida's Everglades, funded partly by redirecting FEMA's Shelter and Service Program. The facility, designed to deter escapes, reflects the administration's commitment to mass deportations, with 11 Iranian nationals, including a former IRGC sniper, arrested since June 22, 2025 for illegal entry. Public opinion is divided. A June 2025 Pew Research survey found 60% support for stricter enforcement, but 45% view current policies as unfair. Economic arguments immigration's role in agriculture versus its fiscal costs complicate the debate. A French study by the Observatory of Immigration and Demography noted that immigrants' taxes cover only 86% of their costs, with a 62.4% employment rate, suggesting similar challenges in the U.S. Cybersecurity and national security. Recent arrests of Iranian nationals underscore security concerns. ICE's operations across 8 states targeted potential sleepers, raising fears of terrorist networks. The DHS warning highlights cyber risks, with Iranian-affiliated hacktivists linked to 2024 attacks on U.S. infrastructure. CISA reported a 15% rise in state-sponsored cyber incidents, prompting Congress to consider the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2025. The House's WhatsApp ban, effective June 20, 2025, reflects heightened vigilance. Concerns over Meta's data practices and foreign surveillance risks drove the decision, with lawmakers now using secure, government-issued devices. The administration is exploring broader reforms to protect critical infrastructure, including mandatory encryption standards. Healthcare reforms, a breakthrough. On June 24, 2025, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and CMS Administrator Dr. Mehmet Oz announced a landmark agreement with major health insurers to reform prior authorization. This process, requiring pre-approval for treatments, delays care for 85% of Americans, with Medicare Advantage denying 3.2 million requests in 2023. The agreement, involving insurers like United Healthcare and Aetna, includes 6 reforms to reduce red tape, accelerate decisions, and enhance transparency. Dr. Oz noted that prior authorization contributes to physician burnout, with doctors spending 12 hours weekly on paperwork. The reforms aim to streamline care for imaging, surgeries, and therapy, benefiting 260 million Americans. Kennedy called it a monumental accomplishment, with further changes planned to address healthcare inefficiencies. Constitucional debates. Judicial authority. The judiciary's role is under scrutiny. Judge Murphy's defiance of the Supreme Court's deportation ruling highlights tensions, with critics arguing it undermines the rule of law. The administration is exploring judicial reforms, including term limits for federal judges, though such changes require congressional approval. Chief Justice Roberts' silence has fueled calls for accountability, with Stephen Miller warning of a rogue judiciary. Section 3. Political Dynamics and the 2026 Midterms. Congressional Divisions. President Trump's criticism of Representative Thomas Massie, RKY, and Senator Lisa Murkowski, RAK, underscores GOP divisions. Massie's opposition to the Iran strikes and a proposed tax reform bill prompted Trump to label him not MAGA, endorsing a primary challenger. Murkowski's openness to leaving the GOP for independent status signals further fractures, with rhinos, Republicans in name only, like Liz Cheney exposing their divergence from Trump's agenda. Democrats face internal chaos. On June 23, 2025, Representative Al Green's impeachment motion against Trump failed, with 128 Democrats voting against it. The party's 25% approval rating, per Gallup, reflects voter frustration over inflation, 3.5%, and border security. Figures like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, continue to push impeachment, but Trump dismissed her as one of the dumbest people in Congress, highlighting Democratic disunity. Key issues. The 2026 midterms will focus on economy. The Big Beautiful Bill, a tax reform package, aims to avoid a 68% tax hike while eliminating taxes on tips, overtime, and Social Security. Massie's opposition risks GOP unity, with voters demanding relief per a 55% Pew Research priority. Immigration. Republican ads highlight enforcement successes, while Democrats advocate comprehensive reform, facing skepticism. National security. The Iran ceasefire bolsters Trump's image, with 45% of voters concerned about global stability. Healthcare. Kennedy's reforms resonate, though Democrats claim credit for prior authorization fixes. Electoral outlook. Republicans aim to expand their House majority, 225, 210, and retake the Senate. Democrats lead 51-49. Battlegrounds like Pennsylvania and Ohio favor GOP challengers, leveraging Trump's 52% approval rating, Rasmussen reports. Democrats are targeting urban and Gen Z voters, but internal divisions weaken their strategy. Ad spending is projected at $2 billion by November 2026 per Ad Impact. Section 4. The Path Forward. Global Leadership. Trump's peace through strength doctrine, exemplified by the Iran ceasefire, positions the U.S. as a global leader. NATO discussions, led by Trump, aim to increase members' defense spending to 5% of GDP, with Spain as a holdout. Rutte's praise underscores Trump's leverage, with Europe poised to share burdens. Domestic reforms. The administration's agenda includes tax reform, eliminating income taxes long-term, replacing them with external revenue sources, per Trump's vision. Federal Reserve. Discussions about ending the Fed's role reflect concerns over fiat currency, though implementation is complex. Accountability. A special prosecutor is investigating 2020 election irregularities, with DOJ evidence fueling reforms. Challenges. Polarization. 70% of Americans view the opposing party as a threat. YouGov, 2025. Bipartisan efforts on veterans' care could bridge divides. Economic risks. Oil prices at 90 per barrel, EIA, and potential Fed rate hikes threaten growth. Security. Paid protest networks linked to groups like Samadown and funded indirectly by George Soros, per Nate Friedman, pose risks. ICE's arrests mitigate threats. Vision for the future. The LM report envisions a U.S. leading with integrity, fostering stability and prosperity. By addressing nuclear threats, securing borders, and reforming systems, the nation can thrive. Informed dialogue is key to this mission. Thank you for joining me on LM Report Episode 19. We've explored the Iran ceasefire, domestic reforms, and the political crossroads ahead. Subscribe to LM Report on YouTube and hit the notification bell for updates. Share this episode to spark meaningful conversations. I'm Lima, and I'll see you next time. Be well, be safe, and stay engaged.